Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to objectively unpack the rapidly growing longevity market strictly by the numbers. There is a whole lot of noise out there right now about living forever, right? But we really want to cut through that hype and look at exactly what the data, the venture capital, and the regulatory shifts are actually telling us about the future of human health.
Here is our agenda for today. First, defining the longevity market. Second, the innovations driving the sector. Third, the efficacy and cost debate. And fourth, what lies ahead. Let's jump right into Section 1, defining the longevity market, from biomarkers to biological age. Longevity isn't just some vague concept about living longer anymore. It's a highly active, operational medical sector. It encompasses concrete treatments for things like menopause and hormone replacement therapy. It includes the massive surge in weight loss drugs, specifically GLP-1s, which are now being studied for their long-term cardiovascular and anti-aging benefits. Crucially, this market is defined by rigorous biomarker testing and algorithms designed to calculate your actual biological age, rather than just your chronological age. The whole industry is really shifting from selling unverified supplements to providing a highly quantified, data-driven view of a patient's health span.
And to truly grasp the financial scale of this space, the estimated market size sits at roughly $500 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. $500 billion. And this valuation isn't just coming from wealthy consumers paying out of pocket. It's because extending the health span, which is the number of years a person lives disease-free, and cutting long-term chronic healthcare costs is the one objective that all stakeholders, from patients to massive insurance payers, can actually agree on. It's absolutely a modern gold rush.
Moving right along to Section 2, innovations driving the sector, and specifically, the rush of venture capital.
The massive capital flowing into this sector proves that investors are seeing immediate value in comprehensive health data. Take Function Health, for example. They're a startup offering over 100 biomarker blood tests and concierge medicine, and they recently raised a $298 million Series B, reaching a $2.5 billion valuation. Then you have Neko Health, a full-body scanning company, which raised $260 million, hitting a $1.8 billion valuation. Prenuvo pocketed $120 million for their prophylactic MRI technology, and Superpower secured a $30 million Series A. This isn't speculative seed money we're talking about. These are massive, late-stage funding rounds for companies that are operating right now.
But beyond the raw funding of scan and blood test companies, other major players are integrating directly into our daily lives. You've got wearables, like the smart ring maker Aura, most recently valued at $11 billion, heavily involved in real-time health tracking. You have MiniHealth, which specifically tailors longevity offerings for women, which is already covered by payers, by the way, recently raising $50 million. And you have companies like 100 Health trying to build an entire health operating system to aggregate all this lab data. The fundamental takeaway here is that these companies are moving away from handing you a static PDF report. They're aiming to deliver measurable, repeatable, actionable clinical signals that actually change your care trajectory.
Which brings us to Section 3, the efficacy and cost debate, hype versus help.
There is a really interesting quote from venture capitalist Morgan Cheatham, the head of healthcare at Breyer Capital, that perfectly encapsulates the skepticism in this space. He highlights the concern that full-body scans might just induce what he calls VIP syndrome. The core medical concern here is that more information doesn't automatically equal a better outcome. These pricey, out-of-pocket scans don't definitively diagnose anything. They just flag anomalies. And those anomalies then require traditional doctors to order more confirmatory testing, like biopsies or localized imaging. That can severely strain an already overstressed, understaffed traditional healthcare system, often for zero clinical benefit.
To put this into perspective, Cheatham actually experienced this firsthand. He's a healthy 30-year-old guy who decided to try a whole-body MRI, while the scan shocked him by flagging a potential need for a bilateral hip replacement, which is a major, life-altering surgery. But when he followed up with the traditional health system for a full diagnostic, he learned it was just a harmless anomaly requiring absolutely no treatment. This perfectly demonstrates how raw, hypersensitive data without deep clinical context can lead to massive false alarms.
So the crucial point is objectively weighing these two realities. On one side, we have undeniable, life-saving early detection successes. Biotech VC veteran Robert Nelson publicly credits a Prenuvo scan for catching his thyroid cancer early, long before he had any symptoms. But on the exact opposite side, you have high-profile lawsuits. Recently, a patient sued Prenuvo alleging the scan completely missed severe signs of trouble in his cerebral arteries, leading to a massive stroke shortly after he was given a clean bill of health. False positives cause anxiety and waste thousands of dollars? Sure, but a false negative that provides a false sense of security? That can be fatal. Ultimately, industry insiders and skeptics agree that the technology is fascinating and potentially game-changing. But, as Cheatham points out, it's a worthwhile experiment, but we need to study it and measure it. Rigorous clinical studies are desperately needed to prove efficacy, and that's uniquely difficult in this sector because definitively proving that an intervention extends a human lifespan takes decades of tracking. We need peer-reviewed evidence showing that these tools actually extend healthy life, rather than just creating a cycle of endless testing.
Let's move to our final segment, Section 4. What lies ahead? Government pilots and regulatory shifts.
If these tools are ever going to go mainstream, they absolutely need support from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS. And the federal government is quietly building a fast lane for this tech. They've introduced a coordinated pipeline. Step 1 is the Access Program. That's a massive 10-year model from CMS that pays providers to manage chronic conditions with tech, but payments are linked strictly to positive patient outcomes. Step 2 is Tempo, an FDA pilot that allows a select group of not yet authorized medical devices to be used within Access to gather real-world data safely. And Step 3 is MAHA Elevate.
Let's look a bit closer at MAHA Elevate, because it directly targets the longevity market we've been discussing. It is a $100 million, 3-year initiative designed to fund up to 30 pilot programs. What's truly fascinating is what it evaluates. Interventions like intensive nutrition, targeted physical activity, and stress management. These are functional, lifestyle medicines that traditional Medicare does not currently cover. The government is literally putting $100 million on the table to see if funding lifestyle changes up front prevents massive hospital bills down the road.
However, the digital health sector must still overcome massive hurdles to actually capitalize on these government pilots. Investors are looking to 2026 as a breakout year, but there are major unanswered questions. We don't yet know the exact CMS fee schedules, meaning we don't know how much these companies will actually get paid by the government. Startups also struggle with incredibly high consumer acquisition costs and massive customer churn because, let's face it, expensive health subscriptions are often the first thing consumers cancel in a tough economy. And above all, programs like Access demand that companies continuously prove positive patient outcomes to get paid, which is incredibly difficult to track reliably outside of a strict clinical setting.
Which leaves us with this final thought. As hundreds of millions of venture capital dollars pour in, and as the government lays down tracks with new pilot programs, the industry stands at a crossroads. Will these highly advanced, data-driven longevity tools fundamentally reshape public healthcare and become standard infrastructure for everyone? Or will the high costs and clinical uncertainties mean they remain a concierge luxury for those who can afford to pay out of pocket? It's a $500 billion question, and the data gathered in the next few years will give us the answer. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the data, and we'll see you next time.